A Blaze News investigative journalist will bring us the real story of FEMA's activities in North Carolina. Donald Trump's shift at a McDonald's gives the Harris campaign indigestion. And a Blaze original exposes how the Department of State is using disinformation as an excuse to target free speech. We have those stories and so much more. Blaze News Tonight starts right now. Welcome to The Chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Monday, October 21st. After Hurricane Helene, FEMA's been under fire for allegedly being a no-show at the recovery sites. But according to Blaze News journalists Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman, that's not the full story. So here to dive in to what's really happening is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and our investigative journalist Steve Baker, who's on the scene right now in North Carolina. So Steve, what have you seen on the ground? Let us in. What's going on there?
Well, let's just start with the fact that I've had a very emotional 3 days. I've actually been out with the recovery teams, and there's no other way to say it except we're working with cadaver dogs and looking for the remains of victims from the storm. Went to a new site today that was so toxic we all had to be wearing PPE. And then they graciously sent a chopper out, actually flew back to the Savage Freedom's base of operations here at the Harley-Davidson of Asheville just a half hour ago on an old Huey, an old Vietnam War era Huey, brought me back here so that I would be on time for Blaze News Tonight. But as far as FEMA is concerned, before all of that fun started, I actually met with the director here on the ground of FEMA. I met with the director of their quote unquote FEMA camp. And I can talk a little bit more about that as we go on here. So I've had direct conversations with their top spokespeople, and I have toured a couple of their facilities already. They promised to give me tours of others. But there's an interesting thing about this. There is absolutely incontrovertible evidence that FEMA has a much larger footprint on the ground in the disaster zone here. They have 10 disaster relief centers already set up. They now have massive warehouses with just thousands of pallets of dry goods, of drinks, of water, all types of humanitarian aid and needs that are required to be delivered. And yet all of the people also on the ground working in these distant, remote communities never see them. I've been out on the ground in two of the worst hit areas in this state for the last 3 days. And I've seen a couple of Red Cross people. I've seen Samaritan's Purse. Obviously, the Savage guys are running those operations. No FEMA, zero, not one sign of them. So they have more goods, they have more services, they have more people. They have about 1,400 or 1,500 people on the ground here. As I said, they dwarf everyone else's operations. We just don't know where they're delivering everything. I'm not saying they're not, and it is a massive area. It's 28 counties just in North Carolina alone. So we just may be missing one another, but they're here. We're here. I'm embedded with the Savage Freedom Relief Project, and these guys are knocking it out of the park. As a matter of fact, Adam Smith was on with Trump today. Trump was here in Swannanoa, less than a mile from where I'm standing right now. And Adam Smith, the founder of Savage Freedoms, he was there, actually got to speak on stage with Trump today.
Well, Steve, can you tell us a little bit then about what you experienced today? And just a point of clarification, you're out with Savage Freedoms, not with any government entity, and you haven't seen government entities doing search and rescue or recovery. That's something that's being done by the private sector, right?
Look, I spoke to one of their senior spokespeople here today, and I won't identify him because he probably wouldn't appreciate it at this point. But I asked him, why are we not seeing the government agencies, federal agencies, state, local, county, whatever, out at these recovery sites? And he just shrugged and he said, He said, I think that they're just tired of seeing the death. And out at the recovery site that I was at today, I went out there. This was just the recon day. Now, tomorrow, it all starts. They're bringing excavation equipment out where they're going to slowly remove these piles and piles of oh gosh, I'm trying. Well, there we are. That's where I was today. And they're going to be removing those stacks of destruction and slowly remove them, looking for remains. They've already recovered 4 from this site. In fact, the owner of this property lost 2 of his family members, and 2 of his other family members are still missing. And this is a RV recreational park, and that's what happened while these people were there. And as I said, he's lost 4 of his family members, 2 dead, 2 missing. And this particular site is so toxic because these were RVs, so there's tremendous amount of chemical spill in there. There were septic tanks that have been exploded. The ground just came up, and so all of this, and so we had to get decontaminated when we got back. And so this is the type of things that these guys are going out and doing. And in the post recon day briefing, before I flew back to the site here, the project manager coordinator out there, he went through a list of things that are coming that we're going to be doing there. And he said, guys, it's just us left. The government's not coming to our aid. We have to do this. And he said, as most of you have already demonstrated, you came out to volunteer 2 or 3 days, and now you're staying for 10, 14, 21 days. And he said, the same thing is happening to me. I've been here for 8 days now. I don't know how much longer Blaze wants me here, but there's something new to reveal every single day.
Just to be clear, that was 4 bodies at this one location you were at were recovered or found today?
Not today, but this is why the team went out on a recon mission today to survey the site. I went and crawled through all of this massive piles of devastation around the river, down the river, in the river, across the river, walked miles and miles through all of this today. And this was just to identify where they're going to put in the search dogs and search teams tomorrow. And then they'll bring in the excavation equipment as well, then to start lifting this debris out and start looking for remains there. But the actual owner of the RV recreational park, he lost 4 family members. 2 have been recovered and 2 are still missing. They may be there. They may be in Tennessee down the river.
Right. Now the way that you're describing it, right, we've moved on from the initial phase, however you want to say that, to now this is real life. Everything is actually settling in. So how are the people holding up there right now, Steve?
Some of the people now are having to take breaks. I've been here long enough with them. I kind of feel like I'm part of the Savage Freedoms operation team right now. And I'm looking at a tent right here where one of the guys is staying, and he's been one of the most active guys here. He's one of the leaders. He's a troubleshooter. He's the guy. He's the go-to guy for getting problems solved. And he had to take a 2 or 3 day break. All of a sudden I missed him. I didn't see him. He just got back. He set his tent back up here, just right here to my left right now. And he's staying on the ground, just getting down into the 30s now. It's freezing, getting below freezing now at night here in the mountains. And so, but these guys are unbelievably committed to what they're doing here. If I was to turn my camera around, you'd see a whole row of tents around the tree line here. These guys are coming in, they're staying, they're not going, they're volunteering their time. We've heard about the greatest generation. I don't know that we're not, but these men and women here, right here, they are the greatest of our generation.
That's absolutely true. And Steve, I want to say with the time that we have left right now, is there anything that they are still needing? What are the requests there on the ground right now?
Yeah, actually, while I was out on the recovery site today, I was getting texts from JP Decker from Mercury One asking what they needed, and I was able to actually relay some items that they do need. Obviously, we still need the cold weather gear. Anything cold weather related, they need generators. They actually need power banks with the solar power. They need those for the elderly, people that find it much more difficult to maintain a gasoline or diesel powered generator and refuel it, to keep their CPAPs going, to keep their other, their oxygen, all the other needs that the elderly need that still don't have power and won't have power for weeks, some places months before the crews are able to get there. And so those people need that kind of equipment. And then I would say at this point, contact Mercury One, get everything that you have in the way of cold weather gear, clothing, anything that would assist in that manner. And for those who do have the gasoline generators, they're also requesting the need for carbon monoxide detectors, because some of these people are, well, they're not going to know how to use them properly, and we don't want to create a disaster after a disaster.
Absolutely. It's mercury1.org if you want to go ahead and check that out and help the people. Steve, thanks so much for everything that you've been doing there in North Carolina.
Jill, Matt, thank you.
When we come back, Jim Rickards will give us his prediction for the election and the economy. Coming up. Well, there's nothing better than at the end of a long day, sitting down in your favorite easy chair with a glass of your favorite whiskey. And if it turns out that you're helping to support a great American cause, doesn't it make it that much better? Well, it's time to chart your own course with Flying Ace whiskeys from Craft Co. Inspired by generations of American aviators and proudly made right here in the United States, Flying Ace not only makes amazing whiskeys, but they're also committed to supporting our brave troops and their families through their partnership with Folds of Honor. They're providing scholarships to families of Americans fallen or disabled, and these scholarships allow families to begin to chart their own new course after experiencing great sacrifice. Flying Ace Whiskeys is American proud because they're American made, and they're American proud because they're helping to support our heroes and their families. So don't wait around. Today's the day to get your own and see what the hype is all about. Buy online at flyingacespirits.com. Use code America to get free shipping. It's flyingacespirits.com. Code America for free shipping. Our world could change due to several global events in the next few weeks. Here to tell us what to keep an eye on is Jim Rickards. He's the strategic intelligence editor and New York Times bestselling author, and his latest book is MoneyGPT. He joins us right now. So, Jim, let's start with the election. Early voting is underway in many states. So how do you see this shaping up?
Well, that's right. Early voting is underway. The best estimates are that about 2/3 of the voters will vote early, whether it's mail-in, absentee, drop box, lots of different channels. And perhaps only 1/3 of the American people will vote on Election Day, which means the election could be half over right now and will probably be over to all intents and purposes before Election Day. We won't know the results. They won't open a lot of the ballots and count them, et cetera, until Election Day. But it's pretty much over. It's one reason you're seeing such intensity, really, in both the Trump and the Harris campaign. I would say Trump's probably doing a better job in that regard. And the other thing that people are asking themselves is, why the heck is Trump going to California and New York? He's been in Virginia and other states where he's, well, he certainly won't win California or New York. Virginia's a little bit closer, but why is he spending time there? The answer is they're really trying to help the House of Representatives. They're trying to keep some of these House seats. The Republicans took a bare majority in 2022, but a lot of those seats were actually, they were in New York and California, about 5 in each state, and they want to hang on to those and expand that so they can keep the House of Representatives. That's really important in terms of what the Democrats are going to do to disqualify Trump, even if he wins the election on November 5th. So there's a lot of things going on behind the curtain, but it's close. Right now, my best estimate, I have my own proprietary models, but of course I look at others. I've got Trump as a winner in what's probably going to be a tight race, but the Democrats take the House, they'll be moving to disqualify him on January 5th.
Jim, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think there's no way around volatility increasing either way, as we go forward. So let's talk about that period between, voting day and inauguration day. What do you think is going to happen during that time?
Sure, and it's a great question, and a lot of Americans aren't familiar with it, and there's no reason they should be. It's pretty technical stuff. You have to delve into the Constitution and the 12th Amendment and so forth. But there are two critical dates, three altogether, ending on January 6, 2025. We hear endlessly about January 6, 2021. Okay, We know what happened, but January 6, 2025 will be a big deal. So here's how it goes. So on election day, it's November 5th, we get the results. We may not know until November 6th or November 7th. I mean, if they're fighting how to count ballots or qualifying absentee ballots, your signatures match, there's a lot of technicalities there. They could be fighting over that in places like Pennsylvania and Arizona and Georgia for several days. So maybe November 7th is the day they kind of actually announce a winner. But it's not over. As Yogi Berra said, it's not over till it's over. You've got two critical dates in December. One is when the electors actually vote for president in each state capital. We think we're voting for Trump or Harris when we go to the polls. What we're really doing, we're voting for a slate of pledged electors who will then support Trump or Harris. So indirectly, we're really voting for those electors. So I think it's around December 11th. It could be off by a day or two. Those electors go into the state capitals and vote for president. And then there's another, but you could have a fight right there. Are the electors qualified? Do the Democrats claim that the Republican electors were not properly elected because of irregularities, disqualifying illegal immigrants from the voting rolls? We see that going on in Virginia. So there could be a lot of fights right there. Then about a week later, I believe it's December 17th, again, give or take a day, the state official, the governor or the secretary of state, as the case may be, certify those electors, those electoral votes, but they're actually people. I mean, we count them as votes. The numbers matter, but they're actually people. And then certify that and send it to Washington. Then you come to January 6th, 2025, and that's when the Congress counts those votes and declares a final winner. And the Senate does the vice president, and the House of Representatives does the president. Now, here's the thing. The Senate and House I just mentioned, it's the new Senate and House. It's not the existing Senate and House. It's whoever wins on November 5th. They get sworn in on January 3rd. This process I described, a final declaring a winner, is January 6th. Well, on January 4th, and they've already announced this, Jamie Raskin, member of Congress from Maryland, a Democrat, is going to introduce a resolution to declare Trump an insurrectionist under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This was a post-Civil War amendment designed to disqualify Confederate officers and politicians from holding federal office. That's what it says. But it doesn't say Confederate. That was the purpose. But here it is 150 years later. That's still the law. So if you declare Trump an insurrectionist, you could disqualify him from holding federal office, which means his electors won't count. Now, you could have a situation where Trump has, I'll use round numbers, 300 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris has 235 electoral votes. That's an electoral college landslide. But if you disqualify Trump on this insurrection clause, what happens next? Well, the Constitution, now we're in the 12th Amendment, not the 14th Amendment, and it says that this election is then thrown to the House of Representatives. But it goes on to say that the members of the House can only vote for one of the top three electoral vote getters. Well, in the scenario I just outlined, there's only going to be one, which is Kamala Harris. If you disqualify Trump, then nobody has 270, but nobody has any more either. There's nobody else other than Kamala Harris who has any electoral votes. So at that point, you could be in a position where even the Republicans have to vote for Kamala Harris, because under the 12th Amendment, she's the only one. I mean, they say top three. You could have if anyone, George Wallace won electoral votes in 1968, but this isn't 1968. So she's the only one you can vote for. So the question is, would the Republicans be forced to vote for Kamala Harris because that's the only choice given to them by the 12th Amendment? Meanwhile, what's going on in the Senate? Well, the Senate should just, in this scenario, just declare J.D. Vance the vice president. So you could have a situation where you have Kamala Harris as president and J.D. Vance as vice president, which is exactly what happened in 1800, by the way, between Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. They were different parties, hated each other, but they were the president and the vice president the way it worked. Now, here's the twist. Here's the thing to look for. Hopefully the Republicans are smart enough to figure this out. The 12th Amendment also says that the process I just described cannot take place if there's not a quorum. So all the Republicans have to do is go out on the mall and stand in the snow, and that would cause the House not to have a quorum, and you couldn't pick a president because there's no quorum. Then you say, well, then what happens? What happens next? Well, the 12th Amendment says in that situation, the vice president becomes the acting president. So you could actually have J.D. Vance as acting president on January 7, 2025. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds far-fetched, but think about what we've been through recently. We've had 2 attempted assassinations, a coup d'etat on Joe Biden, a faceplant debate at the end of June between Biden and Trump. Everything that's happened so far, this doesn't seem a stretch, but it's all there in the 14th Amendment and the 12th Amendment.
I'm so glad you just laid that out, because it's something I think about a lot, and I think everyone else needs to start thinking about it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so that's the situation that's going on in the United States right now. Globally, there is a huge meeting. The BRICS start meeting tomorrow in Russia. So Jim, I know you know all about this. Is this the next Bretton Woods? What should we be expecting from this meeting?
Well, it might be the end of Bretton Woods. It's a great question. You know, I'm constantly surprised. I look at stories and I do a lot of research and in-depth analysis, and I say, this is the most important thing happening in the world today, and it's barely being reported. I'm glad you brought it up, but I can assure you this is not being reported on any corporate media channels or mainstream news channels. So just for the benefit of the viewers, what are the BRICS? Well, it's an acronym. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Not a new organization, by the way. They've been around since 2006. And they've been doing quite a lot of work in the meantime. Now, at their last meeting, they have an annual leaders summit. They have about 100 meetings a year. They've got meetings on sports and women's rights and human rights, a lot of other finance, a lot of other things going on. But this is what's called the Leaders Summit. And they have a rotating presidency. So this year, guess who's the president of BRICS? Vladimir Putin, and it's taking place in Russia, in the Russian Federation, in a city called Kazan. So it's in Kazan, Russian Federation. Vladimir Putin's the host. He couldn't go last year because it was in South Africa, and there was some fear that he would be arrested because there is a warrant from the International Criminal Court. I think that was a miscarriage of justice, but the warrant's out there, and he really couldn't take a chance on some NGO trying to arrest him in South Africa. Anyway, he's the host. He's in Russia. Xi Jinping is there, Lula of Brazil, Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, all the, as I said, the heads of state, Prime Minister Modi of India, they're all there, plus others. They had new members join last year, Egypt and UAE and Ethiopia and a couple others. So they've expanded the membership. Now, what are the BRICS doing in particular that should be of most concern to Americans, really to the international financial system? They have been creating an alternative payment mechanism so that they can, first of all, not use the dollar at all in all their bilateral trade. And secondly, that they can make secure transfers, message traffic, I owe you money or you owe me money. How do we communicate that? Can we do it in a secure way that the NSA and the CIA and the US can't interdict that message traffic? That's what they've been working on. And they've made a lot of progress. That's going to be announced tomorrow and the day after in the next couple of days. Now, is this the end of the dollar? Not immediately, not overnight. I mean, the dollar is still 60% of global reserves and comparable amount, actually larger in terms of global payments. So the dollar doesn't go away overnight. But this is the beginning of a major alternative to the dollar. So the way it would work is that Russia, ships energy to India and they get paid in rupees, and China ships manufactured goods to Russia and they get paid in ruples or yuan, et cetera. But there's a lot of money flowing back and forth, but you have to keep it a ledger. So they're using blockchain technology for the ledger. Now, this doesn't mean cryptocurrency. You don't run it. I mean, if you like Bitcoin, that's fine. But I'm not saying run out and buy Bitcoin. The blockchain technology has been around since the 1980s. It's not the same as how cryptocurrencies work, but it's very secure, and they will be using blockchain to keep the ledger. And there'll be all kinds of due tos and due froms. So Russia will owe a certain amount of money to China, or India will owe money to Brazil, et cetera, to encourage all this trade. But here's the importance of it. No dollars. There are no dollars in this system, number one. And number two, they've created it from the ground up, and it's completely secure, at least as secure as anything can get, so that, we all know in 2022, the U.S. froze the assets of the Central Bank of Russia, which was, and we do that from time to time, but that certainly sent a chill in everyone's spine. Like, hey, do I really want to own U.S. Treasury securities if the U.S. can freeze them every time I do something they don't like? But now it's worse than that. The U.S. is actually stealing $50 billion. The U.S. and Europe, EU together, are stealing $50 billion of the Russian assets to finance a loan to Ukraine to fight a war against Russia. So if you're Russia, you just want out of the system. I mean, whether they ever get their money back, the $300 billion, remains to be seen. But the fact that it was not only frozen, but that they're stealing it and using it to finance the war in Ukraine is enough to get not just Russia, but China or anyone else who cares about their reserves to get out of the dollar system. And Russia was kicked out of SWIFT. That's an international payment system. Okay, so we kicked Russia out of the system, stole their money, and said, we don't want you. So, but Russia has over $600 billion in reserves. Now, they did a very smart thing over the last 10 years. They actually bought gold, and they got gold up to 25% of their total reserves. So over $150 billion of the $600 billion in gold. But here's the beauty of gold. It's not just that it looks pretty. It's physical and it's secure in vaults in Russia. So you can't seize it or freeze it the way you can with U.S. Treasury securities. So now you'll have all these payments going back and forth. The U.S. can't interdict it. U.S. sanctions don't mean anything. And by the way, I met in the Pentagon with military officials, but also Treasury officials and Federal Reserve officials 10 years ago. And I told them this was happening. I said, your sanctions are very powerful. They are, but they're overusing them. And the question is, how many times can you hit the punching bag before the punching bag gets up and walks out of the room? And now we're at that point. We've overused the sanctions. We've targeted countries that don't deserve it. We put on secondary sanctions. So the punching bag, meaning the BRICS, basically, are walking out of the room, starting their own currency. So is it the end of the dollar overnight? No, but it's the beginning of a trend. And more importantly, this is one explanation why the price of gold, dollar price of gold, has been hitting all-time highs every day.
Yeah, we're going to have you back on for that gold discussion. Gold and silver have started to take off. But Jim Rickards, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
When we come back, Chris Bedford will explain why Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are in completely different gears heading into November. Just ahead. You don't have to wait until November to vote. You can actually vote every single day with your dollar. They're still good at goodranchers.com because you can make a powerful choice to vote for American meat and support American agriculture to make your voice heard for transparency in our food. Good Ranchers sources all of their meat exclusively from American farms, which not only supports the local ranchers, but it also ensures that you receive that high quality American-raised meat without the antibiotics, the hormones, or the seed oils. By shopping from goodranchers.com, you're making a statement about the kind of values that you stand for, which is quality, hard work, dedication to the American tradition. And right now, Good Ranchers is having a presidential promo. So for a limited time, you can get a free add-on for a whole 4 years. And that means when you subscribe to any of their boxes, you decide if you want extra plain chicken breast, Angus ground beef, apple smoked with bacon, or wild-caught salmon in your order for 4 years. It's the perfect way to ensure that you have high-quality American meat in your kitchen. And every cut is pre-trimmed and individually packed, which makes your life easier. There's no more messy meal prep, no wasted food because of freezer burn or poor storage packaging. Good Ranchers helps you get the most flavor and value out of every ounce of meat you buy, and in this economy, that matters so much. So don't miss out. Use my code Jill to claim this presidential promo worth over $1,200 and also claim $25 off your first box, plus free express shipping, and bring 100% American meat to your families until 2028. It's goodranchers.com, code Jill. Goodranchers.com, American meat delivered. We're 15 days out from Election Day, and in an ideal world, this is when candidates would start building momentum. But that's not what Kamala Harris is doing, as Blaze senior political editor Chris Bedford wrote in his latest Beltway brief, and he joins us now to discuss. So, Chris, what is Kamala doing right now, and why is this different for where we are in this election season?
Well, she's doing something right now that candidates usually have to do during the primary season and then at the beginning of their general election campaign if they win that. She, of course, skipped all of those steps. She's in the convincing voters stage, the persuasion stage, the, hey, I'm Kamala Harris. She's had to say, I don't know if you've noticed this, if you've ground your way through all of her interviews she's done over the last 2.5 weeks, but almost every one of them, she says this like super mundane thing, which is, I'm running for president of the United States, which is how she answers some questions. But more to the point, she really kind of is still in that stage where she is trying to reach out to people who have never heard of her and just explain what her case is, going places where she's been unable to reach voters before. And it's not out of confidence like you might see with some candidates who will go into the lion's den because they're feeling so good. It's out of desperation. As one longtime Republican campaign consultant I talked to pointed out, they are clearly seeing something in the crosstabs of their fancy internal polling that's really making them worried. Now compare that to Donald Trump, who appears tanned and relaxed. He's out there basically trying to gin up support to tell all those voters who we know like to see positive headlines about him, like to hear that he's doing well, that they don't miss voting. That they are, as one Washington Examiner editor put it, willing to crawl over broken glass to vote for him. Where if a kid gets sick at school or there's inclement weather or something goes wrong at work, they don't just put it off and say, oh, don't worry. He's in the tuning up the base and making sure people do that. And if you look at his campaign schedule, that really comes across. He had a rally over the weekend in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I last saw him when in Latrobe, Pennsylvania in 2020. Back then, there was a line 10 miles long, or maybe even a little bit longer, for people trying to get in to see him. And he won that county by, I think, 7 points or something. He's in Latrobe because he needs every one of those people to turn out in Pennsylvania. Compare that to Kamala, it's a different story.
Okay, so that's Donald Trump. Then let's go to what he was doing that had everybody's attention over the weekend when he was serving fries at McDonald's in the drive-thru in Pennsylvania. Let's watch.
Well, that's a good-looking group. Hello, everybody. This is not a normal situation, is it, huh? How are you? What a good-looking family. How did you produce those good-looking kids? Oh, they look like the wife. They look like the wife. How are you? Nice to see you. That's great. Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Thank you. And there'll be no charge. Trump is paying for it. Is that okay?
Trump 2024.
Oh, you're doing some extra stuff.
Oh, okay, great.
This is all on Trump.
Oh, all on Trump.
I'm allowed to do that, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Let's check and make sure it's everything you said it would be.
It better be. It's going to be the best you ever. I made it myself.
People were out there saying they got an extra chicken nugget in their order. People were loving it. Bedford, what did you think?
This is the kind of move that I think is actually going to change the future of American campaign politics in the way that everyone who wants to win a primary has to go to the Iowa State Fair.
That's right, they do.
In the future, everyone who wants to run for president is going to have to do a stint as an everyday worker. And, you know, it took 60 years or so for somebody to finally take Andy Warhol's advice. That theatrical person who was so great at getting attention for his antics wrote years ago, decades ago, that if a president of the United States just cleaned a toilet, just did an everyday job, just filled French fries, flipped a burger, showed that there was no job beneath him, that would go wild. He was talking about all of the different things that are left on the ground for people who are running for office to easily just pick up and get that kind of publicity. It was incredible. And it's as some non-political friends or even Democrat friends of mine pointed out, they'd not seen him look so happy and just kind of contented and relaxed as you see. If you're Republican advisors or you're people who are betting on him winning, you see that face, you see this reaction, And you see the way the left wing has tried to pretend it just didn't even happen. Well, that's a good place to be just 15 days out from an election.
Chris, I mean, it really does seem like he was happy with those fries. I mean, even when he's putting it in, you could just see him thinking, "I've always wanted to do this." There was something that was just very authentic about it. I think this is a remarkable moment because if you remember, it wasn't that long ago when even he was still thinking along normal lines. And I mean, I know this because he said things to my face when I tried to make this case with many others that, hey, they're squeezing you, think outside the box about media. And at the time, he was still kind of thinking, well, I can get on 60 Minutes anytime I want. But he knew that wasn't quite right. He was triangulating, right? And what he's done over the last few years is really remarkable because now it's all out. This is the most modern, presidential campaign we've ever seen. He's going on podcasts. He's doing this McDonald's thing. He's like Trump unbound, and you can't stop him. And just like in 2016, he now has control over the news cycle again, which is what Twitter gave him before, right? He could go on Twitter, he could sit on the pot and say something, and everyone would freak out, and they just couldn't stop doing it. And now he's doing that, and he has this momentum. So all of that being said, 60 Minutes, the failing 60 Minutes is in the news now, where he's accused them of deceitfully editing, right, this Harris interview, and they say that it's false and they refuse to release it. Are they gonna? Is that just gonna be the end of it?
Oh yeah, I mean they're a private company and they're going to do that. They're not going to allow this to come out. They're completely invested in protecting Kamala's image. They think it's important for them to protect their own. If they don't talk about it on CBS, then a lot of the people who tune into that program or tune into that network aren't going to hear about it. I talked to multiple voters in 2020 who didn't even hear about the Hunter Biden laptop story until after the election, when it was finally covered because these things were pushed down. And the media doesn't feel like they're doing a good enough job. Like you said, Trump is out there not even generating these headlines with controversy, but generating them with trips down to the local convenience store in New York, trips to the McDonald's, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers game where people are chanting Trump, 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 Trump over and over again. He doesn't have to be courting the controversy. It's kind of traditional, but he's doing it in a way that other politicians can't. And then if you look at the Democrat side, and you start to say, well, maybe Republicans are stuck in this bubble. Maybe there's actually good polling coming out there. You can't really see that much of it being cited. You've got on the one side, Democrats in the media pointing to polls from July and August to try and justify bright spots they can see. And then you see this other really even more, I think more insidious in the CBS just lying game, which is every single day, pundits are going out and attacking Black men and white people for how they're going to vote, like as a group, as a race, as a people. It's allowed on MSNBC, it's allowed on CNN, it's allowed on CBS, and we're being told now. I think it's coming out of a little bit of desperation that you must vote for Kamala Harris if you're a Black person, and you must vote for Kamala Harris if you're a white person. And anyone who does something different from that is betraying democracy or betraying their race or supporting slavery. That's not healthy political pushing. That is so far removed from chants at a football game or smiles at a McDonald's. It shows you a kind of just breakdown that's happening in Democratic talking points. So the media, which has been covering Trump negatively at increasing rates now for literally 8 years, at the same time, you see his favorability rising and rising and rising in complete opposition to that. They have sacrificed themselves on this and not actually taken down Trump.
Well, that will have to be the last word. Very well said, Bedford. We'll catch you tomorrow.
See you then.
We'll expose the State Department's censorship efforts. Don't go anywhere. The U.S. Department of State, under the leadership of Secretary of State Antony Blinken, has become fixated on controlling speech under the pretense of disinformation. Blaze News reporter Cortney Weil recently wrote about this for theblaze.com, and she joins us now. So, Cortney, start us off. Can you set the scene for us and explain what the Biden-Harris administration did in the censorship scandal?
Yeah, Jill, actually, it starts back in 2016 under the Obama administration. At that time, the U.S. State Department created what is called the Global Engagement Center. Now, the Global Engagement Center has as its core mission to investigate potential disinformation agents in foreign countries. So in theory, it's supposed to be investigating potential nefarious foreign influence, but unfortunately, in practice, it has not adhered to that mission statement and instead turned its sights onto Americans instead.
Cortney, so it turns its sights inward, right? And they did this over the course of a few years. I mean, especially 2018 is big. When the Russian collusion campaign falls apart, all of a sudden they start to say, well, wait a minute, it's domestic misinformation that's the problem, right? So explain a little bit how they do that and how Blaze Media got wrapped up in all this, because this is not a story that we're untouched by.
No, it's not an abstraction at all for us. So what, to your point, Matthew, what happened was in 2021, the Global Engagement Center, again, a division of the State Department, so therefore funded by U.S. taxpayers, actually issued a $100,000 grant to a foreign organization, the Global Disinformation Index, which then turned around and blacklisted several right-leaning media outlets, including Blaze Media, as one of the riskiest purveyors of disinformation. So it appears that the State Department, through the Global Engagement Center, laundered taxpayer dollars through a foreign organization to censor Americans, which is very alarming.
We hear about these stories just over and over and over again. I feel like, right? It's always on the right. It's never on the left. It only happens one way. So how do we even begin to fight back? And who are some of the key players that are trying to at least push back against all of the censorship that's out there?
Fortunately, we do have some intrepid reporters, including Gabe Kaminsky at the Washington Examiner. The New York Post has also kept a very careful eye on this. And then we have some very brave Republicans in a position to do something about this. And they include Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas has filed a lawsuit in conjunction with a couple of outlets. They have sued the Global Disinformation Index for blacklisting these outlets and effectively impacting their ability to advertise. In addition, we also have some key members of the House, Representative Jim Banks of Indiana and Representative Darrell Issa of California, who are so incensed by what the Global Engagement Center has been up to that Representative Issa has in fact called for the dissolution of the Global Engagement Center because they just can't be trusted.
Cortney, what's so shocking about this particular story, which I encourage everyone to go onto the Blaze and read, is that not only did the State Department, through a circular route, fund an outside foreign group that then said, we're all bad guys and we're disinformation. And then, of course, that information is used by that group for social media companies and others to potentially punish Blaze Media and other corporations that are just promoting speech that our State Department doesn't like in its own country. So not only did they do that, right, but the people who did strike back, some of the people you mentioned, explain why they're mad, right? I mean, Jim Banks is angry. Matt Taibbi is angry. Kaminsky is, they're doing their job, and the State Department, unbelievably, was trying to discredit them for simply doing their job and finding out what the State Department is doing with our tax dollars. Do I have that right?
You have it exactly right. It's outrageous. So rather than maybe walk back some of that censorship and attempt to target Americans, they decided to shoot the messengers. They targeted Kaminsky for being such a steadfast reporter on this topic. They tried to go after the Taibbi, even the New York Post. So their solution is to shoot the messenger and not actually do anything about the censorship.
It's outrageous every single time. Everybody go follow Cortney on social media. She has some great stuff, and definitely go read this Blaze original at theblaze.com. Cortney, thanks so much for your time today.
Great to be here. Thanks.
We'll give you some takeaways from the episode right after this. Don't go anywhere. Well, it's the most important election of our lifetime, and Nate Silver has dropped a new election forecast update. He has Donald Trump right at 53% and Kamala Harris around 47%. So Matt, I thought it was interesting when we had Jim Rickards on that he was saying even the day after the election, we might not know anything. And that's not just because things might get a little weird in Pennsylvania and Michigan counting votes. There might be more to this story.
Yeah, so I hope if you heard this, you just go back and listen to what he said, because a lot more people should be writing about this, just like a lot more people should have been writing about this before the last election in 2020. In that election, the left said electors certification, all that stuff is weird, and they played on everyone's ignorance and say that's all very strange, and Trump shouldn't have done this. He was trying to overturn the election. What will happen this time is they will do the exact same thing that they accused Trump of doing, which is playing the constitutional game when things are close. And so to what he said, it's great that, it's moving in a positive direction. Everyone's feeling really happy right now, but there is a lot of scenarios that could unfold if anything's all close, because they're going to fight it the entire time. They're going to say all kinds of things if it's at all close in any of these states, which it might be, right? Mm-hmm. That's before you even say, like, we know who won in the state, right? They're going to delay the voting process, and that favors them for some odd reason. They're going to delay that. But then you're going to have these constitutional questions that are going to come up. The insurrectionist bit is going to come up, whether or not there was shady things going on the right-leaning side, and therefore the election was invalid in a certain state. So they have a phalanx of lawyers. This is what I said the other day. They have armies of lawyers ready to do this. Mark Elias and the other, some of the worst people in the country, they've had plenty of time to think about this. Mm-hmm. They have plenty of time to change the law. They've had plenty of time to game it out. So I would just, my biggest fear, right, is that it plays out. That shocks the hell out of a lot of people, which will increase volatility on both sides. Yep. And they will be, 3 steps ahead. So that's, I don't say the bad news. I mean, this is, everyone needs to go out and push and vote. This is all null and void, right, if there's a big landslide victory. But this is a real possibility. Everything that Rickards was talking about is a very real possibility between November and January 6th.
Yeah, and Rickards is one of the guys who always plays out all of the different theories and things that could happen. But I loved it when you were talking to Chris Bedford and you said Donald Trump, he owns the media cycle. Once again, Trump is, he's the master of the media. And we saw it one more time with McDonald's.
Yeah, it's everyone else in American politics has been fake on the media. Like Obama, the first Twitter president. That's literally what they said. They said Obama was the first Twitter president, which is hilarious now because Twitter came out, was brand new, right? And he had an intern like saying some boring things. Trump is obviously the master of X, the master of digital. He has the best memes. And for a while, I have to say, after 2020, that was flagging. Mm-hmm. And myself and many others were trying to suggest various things. But, Trump was sitting there. He was thinking about it. He triangulated and he figured it out. And you can see now he's in full stride. I mean, he is going out and doing all kinds of interesting hits on podcasts that normally people wouldn't do. He knows he doesn't need to go on 60 Minutes because 60 Minutes sucks anyway. And he's basically saying as much in public. And this McDonald's thing, I mean, how genius is it?
Yeah. I remember during the Republican primary season, I was a little upset because Donald Trump wasn't campaigning as much as I liked him to. Yes. If I could only go back and tell 2022, 2023, Jill, what was about to happen, everything would have been okay. Don't forget to subscribe to Blaze News Tonight on your favorite podcast platform and rate and review the show. And we'll be back to break it all down.